Hello friends, welcome to my video of how things used to be. I have a lot of subscribers. They've sent me comments and things wanting me to tell more about the good old days when I was a lad of a boy and some of the things that we did back then. And back then, I mean back in the early 1950s. This is my little Smokey. She's come back. Everybody's been asking about her, and she's home with her daddy now. So she's safe, and she's with her daddy, and her beautiful blue eyes are showing. That's a good girl. Sorry about it, didn't mean to interrupt, but I have to give that girl a squeeze and a hug and a kiss. That's what you do with females, you know. But I remember when I was a lad of a boy, my grandmother, at my grandmother's house, we would get up early in the morning. We'd have to go out and get wood and bring it in from my grandmother. And she had a pot-bellied stove, an old black pot-bellied stove. And it was a wood stove. And she'd fire it up and get it going. And listen, this is in the summertime, people. She didn't have, back then we didn't have electricity and stuff like that where she lived. She lived out the other side of Alny, Texas, way out in Wichita Falls. They had 100 acres. And anyway, she would do all of her cooking for the day early in the morning. And of course, we would have to get up, and go out and do the chores. My brother would milk the cows. I always try to learn how to milk a cow. But my brother, he was jealous. My brother did not want me to know how to do these things because he wanted to be the one that did things. I mean, that's just the way my brother was, And he would squirt me in the face with milk. He would turn the teat up and squeeze. He'd tell me, look right here now, I'm trying to teach you. You want to learn? I said, yeah. I stepped forward, and when I did, he'd get me every time. I had hot milk all over my face and my eyes. And anyway, I never got to learn how to milk a cow. But my grandmother would do all that cooking. And we're talking, summer heat, West Texas, 115, 118 degrees in the shade. I mean, it was horrible, people. She lived out close to, I think they called it Rattlesnake Mountain, way out Alny, Texas, I think it was called. But I remember those things of so long ago. And I kind of stop and sometimes I kind of cry because I remember how people were back then. And friends, you didn't even have to lock your front door. And you know what they did back then? They left their car keys in the ignition of the car. They didn't even lock their car or anything. They didn't lock their houses. They had a skeleton key for a lock. Skeleton keys, you could get them at the hardware store anytime you want. One skeleton key fit every lock there was. That's how honest people were back then, though. We didn't have to worry about intruders or home invaders. Back then, if people committed a crime, like even if they raped a woman, they were given life sentence automatically. And if they caused the death of someone, then they were electrocuted in the electrocution chair, the electric chair. Of course, the Democrats stopped all that because they like criminals and they want their votes, so they changed all of our laws completely. All of our laws have changed. They have destroyed so much in our nation, but I never shall forget my grandmother. And she would always top off the end of her meals, like with in the oven, on that wood stove oven, pot-bellied stove. She would make apple pie. She'd make cookies. She made biscuits, eggs, gravy. She made fried chicken and different vegetables that we would go and pick out of the garden, and we would wash them off and clean them and get them ready, and then she'd put them in a pot, and she'd cook up big pots of vegetables, and this is what we had. She did a lot of her own canning, with those mason jars. Canning, I should say, not cannon, but canning. And she did such wonderful things, and I remember going out in her watermelon patches, and my brother, he learned how to do it. He could thump a watermelon and tell whether it was ready to eat or not. And of course, I'd have to carry the big old watermelon all the way back up to the farmhouse. And I tell you what, it was really something. But you know, there are so many things that I remember. I remember the old fishing hole that me and my brother used to go to when we lived out the other side of Balch Springs, way out in the country. We were barefooted all summer long, and we wore cutoffs, you know, cutoff jeans and t-shirts. We would take our poles and our cane poles, and we would take one piece of bacon, and we'd split a little piece of bacon up and tie it on the pole and put it in there. Man, you could catch 100, 150 crawdads all by yourself on just a little bitty piece of meat, because they never got to eat it. As soon as they got it, we'd pull them out, put them in the little, well, it's like a minnow bucket, and we'd put them in there, and they couldn't crawl out because we put the top on it so they couldn't crawl out. And we caught so many crawdads, it was unbelievable. But I remember those days, walking out in the country, people, and just breathing the air that wasn't tainted with all the chemicals and pollutions that we have nowadays. And how that you could go to the store with a nickel and buy a bottle of Coke. And back then it was real Cokes. It wasn't this junk they sell nowadays. Or you could buy a Dr. Pepper. There were little bitty Cokes and little bitty Dr. Peppers and little bitty 7-Up. And that's all we had. We didn't have little bitty Pepsis. We didn't have them. We had Coke, Dr. Pepper, and 7-Up. There wasn't no such thing as Sprite and all that other junk. Then along came Pepsi, and then along came RC Cola. And of course, they weren't little bottles. They started getting larger size bottles by the time they came along. And then of course Pepsi came along, and we didn't really care for Pepsi. We always drank Coca-Cola. And when they came out with Mr. Cola in the 1950s, we fell head over heels in love with that. Mr. Cola was the first 16-ounce cold drink. I call it a Coke, but it wasn't a Coke. It was a Mr. Cola. And it was the most delicious that I have ever tasted in my life, and we loved it. And my dad used to buy a case of them. I think a whole case cost $2. And you're talking 24 16-ounce drinks. But these were bottles. These were big old things. The regular size Cokes were $1 a case. And there was 24 in each case. And but they sold them at the grocery store, the supermarkets, back then for that price. And by 1959, they had went from $1 to $4 a case. And the 16-ounce Mr. Colas, they went to $4 a case also in 1959, and then they were discontinued because Coca-Cola did not want their competition. And I never will forget it, but there were just the difference between today and those times of so many years gone by. I look back and sometimes I cry about it because I remember the good people. You could talk to people. People were always on the porches in their rocking chairs. You come down the street, and they'd say, "Hey, young fella, come up here." I'd go up there, and they'd give me a Coke and a cookie, and we'd sit there talking. They'd say, "Why don't you play some dominoes with me?" I didn't know how to play dominoes. They said, "Well, can you play checkers?" I said, "Yeah." So I'd play a game of checkers with them, drink a Coke, eat my cookie, and then I'd leave. Things are so different nowadays than they were back then. And a lot of these memories, they come to me, and you can't help but wonder, all those people are dead and gone now. And you just can't help but wonder, wow, where did all those beautiful days go? Hey, hit the like button, subscribe. I'll see you on the next video. Goodbye from Texas.